Hello, my name is Dr. Jan Janečka. I'm an associate professor at Duquesne University, and today I'm going to show you how to download and install R in RStudio. Now, R is a very comprehensive computing language and environment for statistical analyses, data visualization, and you can also use it to make presentations, even PowerPoint slides now. It has a lot of different capabilities. And RStudio is a integrated development environment that helps you harness the power of R. And so if you're going to use R, I really recommend you do it through RStudio. Moreover, I recommend that you download and use the preview version of RStudio because it has additional tools embedded in RStudio that are not yet available in the regular version. Okay, so to download R, simply do a Google search, download R, and we're doing a Windows installation today, so I'm going to click on the RStudio, or I'm sorry, the R for Windows. Open it in a new tab. And of course, if you have a Mac, then you would open up the tab for the Mac download and installation, right? So I'm going to click download R 4.1.1 for Windows. That's going to download the installer to my computer. And once that's done, I'm going to open it and I'm going to run the installation. Now while the installation is running, I'm going to make a few comments on the other versions of R. Okay, so here we have it downloaded, and we're gonna now install it. When you do the R installation, you can use just the default settings. You don't have to customize it really at all. Now, of course, once you become more R savvy and you might want to change the way that the installer is working, you can go ahead and customize that, right? But so far I have not had to do any kind of custom options during the install. Okay, so I'm going to leave that running. And I'm just going to mention that if you are using a Mac, okay, there is a binary that's installed that you can also run the installation. One thing that they do point out is that when you have the latest operating system in Mac, you may need to also install Xquartz because it says in here that it's no longer part of the OS X. So you may have to do that before installing R. In addition, if you have, let's go back to the other one, if you have a Linux machine, I'm going to just click on this thing. There's also versions for Linux. If you have trouble with these installations, R has a massive community that provides support and also help with any kind of issues that you're having, right? So if you're having a problem with installing R on your computer, I really recommend just do a simple Google search, with your particular operating system setup. And more often than not, you're going to find either a blog or someone posted a page that helps you troubleshoot these issues. Okay, so the installation finished for R. Now, the reason that you want to install R first is because, remember, RStudio is an IDE to help you use R. So obviously, you have to have R in order to have RStudio downloaded and running, right? It's best if you download R first than if you were to do RStudio before downloading R. Alright, so now that we have R installed, I'm going to search download RStudio preview. Of course, I misspelled download, so I'm going to click on the correct spelling of that. And I'm going to click on the page that comes up. And so here, again, all you have to do is download installer, and again, you have the option of different operating systems, right? So there are versions not only for Mac and Windows, but of course for Linux. Now, if you have a Chromebook, they don't make a version directly for a Chromebook. However, I have seen various posts that say that with a Chromebook, you can install Linux onto a Chromebook and then download and install R into that Linux operating system, right? So there's probably workarounds if you have a Chromebook. Okay, so again, I'm going to download the preview version. And again, once that downloads, I'm going to run that installer. Now, so what are some of the things that you can do in the preview version that you are not able to do in the regular RStudio, right? So some of the ones that I'm aware of is that RStudio has tried to increase the capability of how you can present and output various graphics, for example, figures, tables, from R in RStudio, right? So one of the nice things about that I like is that it uses a library called Markdown, and that you can export your data tables directly into a Markdown document and then create it into a PDF, right? You can also choose to put these graphic outputs into web pages, HTMLs. You can even now export it into PowerPoint presentations, right? And so that makes it really nice, and it helps you integrate it with whatever downstream applications that you actually have. Another thing that I noticed most recently is that RStudio Preview has the capacity to incorporate Python code into that environment. And that's really nice because there's a lot of bioinformatics and computational analyses that are written in Python. And so it just creates this really nice environment where you're not only restricted to software and code that's in R, right? But you're now able to leverage code written in Python. And of course, things that are written in Python can be, they can be also written in R, but why would you do that extra step, right? If something is in Python and it works well, just trying to, transform it into R code yourself is cumbersome. It may not be necessarily, and it's also prone to introducing errors, right? And so now this R has really expanded environment to being able to use code and functions from different languages. And so that's a really nice additional capability that is really being expanded. Okay, so my RStudio installer downloaded, and now I'm going to open it and I'm going to run it. Now, one of the things that I also see sometimes is, depending on what sort of user you are on your computer, you may have to run the installer with admin privileges, and sometimes I've even seen that depending on how your computer is set up, when you start an R session or RStudio session, that you also have to right-click and start that session as admin. Is basically RStudio needs to download and install things onto your computer. Now, it typically has it in a area that if you're a user on it, you should have privileges to modify those folders. However, I have seen issues where students have not able to run something, and when they ran it with admin privileges, it seemed to fix that problem. Okay, so now I'm just gonna open up RStudio and take a real quick look at it. I'm not gonna do much of an introduction because the main thing that I wanted to show you is just where to get the preview version of RStudio, and then just kind of step by step for the installation. But as you can see, when you open up RStudio and you have R installed first, it's ready to go, right? So you have a window where you can create a script. You have the console and terminal down below where you can execute your your information. And then you have on the right, you have a panel with your environment. So for example, any kind of data frames that are in there, objects, the history, the connections, tutorials. And then here on the right, lower right panel, you have a file browser. You have a tab that's going to have your plots when you create plots of data, what packages are currently downloaded, which ones are actually running in the the particular instance of R that you have. So in terms of R, we're calling it which R packages are loaded, right? There's also help files, and then your viewer. So now that you have the R installed, what will be very helpful is I have another tutorial that I've posted, how to import data tables and perform some basic functions and create plots in R. So after you have this downloaded and working, I encourage you to go ahead and watch that video, because it's going to show you how to basically get data into R and then how to work with it and create output files and then save it all. I also made another tutorial that provides some tips for importing data and also opening data in R is basically like two different things, right? So you can open a file in R and it doesn't do anything with it, and you can also import the data into R and make it into a data frame that you can do analysis on. And so there's also all these other issues that people have trouble with when they're trying to get data into R. That's one of the biggest stumbling blocks for people who are new to R. And so if you watch that video, I provide some tips on how to ensure that you have properly imported your data. So thank you, and I'm going to be posting more videos like this soon, and I hope that you found this useful. Thank you.